Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Bob, and in this video I'm going to download some free assets of the internet, give them some animations with Mixamo, and then import them into Unity. Let's get to it. So there's a couple of places that you can go to get free assets to use in your video games. The ones that I would recommend are CG Trader, TurboSquid, or free3d.com. Now for this project we are going to use free3d.com because they have some models that I really like, particular Pokemon ones, because that's the kind of game that I'm going to be making here. So I'm just going to type in Pokemon in the engine, and you can basically pick whichever models you like. What we're going to be using for this one is a specific Pokemon, and if you're doing the assignment you also need a trainer and some Pokeballs. So you can just look for some that you like. I am going to go with PsyDuck, so let's get PsyDuck here. Saving them on the desktop. Let's see, I want a trainer. This trainer will do. And these are all free. Of course, if you want to use them in a commercial game, you want to check the license and make sure that you're actually allowed to do that. But this looks good enough. And then I need some Pokeballs. Here we go, plenty of Pokeballs. All right, so that's the first step here. Now, next up, you want to go to Mixamo.com. Now, Mixamo used to be its own company until they were acquired by Adobe. And you can just set up an account. You can just sign up if you don't have an account with them yet. If you have an Adobe account, you can use it. But if you happen to be taking this program at Northeastern, the Northeastern corporate account that you might have as a student is not going to work with this. You have to set up your own account. So you can just make a Google account, whatever you like. It should be fine. And you should be able to sign in that way. And when you do so, you should see this backend where you can select a lot of different characters. If you click on the characters, like say, I don't know, you want to use the boss. And then you can assign animations to them. So let's say we want the boss to fall down for a death animation. You can just click on it. Or if you want him to be sitting laughing, which is a little bit more jolly, I guess, that's what that will look like. So what we want now is we want to import our own model, and we want to apply these Mixamo animations to that model. So let's see what we have there. Okay, so I'm gonna take a look at the files that we downloaded, and I think this might be the first file that I downloaded, the PsyDuck one. So for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just gonna use PsyDuck. So let's bring in PsyDuck. Let's see what's in that folder. Now, this is gonna depend on whoever makes the model that you download for free. So what do we have in there? So the DAE file, I think that is that's a format by Adobe for 3D files. Usually I like to use the FBXs, and an FBX is provided here. So let's just grab that FBX file, and then eventually we're gonna need the images as well, because they will provide the textures, which is basically the images that will wrap around the 3D model, but we'll get to that in a bit. So let's see if we can import our PsyDuck character into Mixamo, if that works out. I'm going to click on upload character. I'm going to drag and drop that in there and see what happens. Now this is going to take a little while depending on the 3D model that you're working with. So I'm just going to pause here and unpause as soon as it's done. And it does look like there is a little bit of an issue. Sorry, we're unable to map your existing skeleton. So with a skeleton, that means that this 3D model already has a skeleton, or a rig, if you will, embedded in the file. So what am I talking about with that? Well, if you look at that image here, you have a 3D model for what I think is a Minotaur. And then to the left of it, you have what is the rig, or the skeleton of the model. So this is basically a visual representation of how there are virtual bones really inside of your 3D model that you can then use to animate. So they kind of function like, well, bones and muscles of a human body, so that you can put an animation on the character. Now, when you work with Mixamo to animate the characters, Mixamo is going to auto rig. So they're going to calculate what would be a good skeleton for the figure that you have through an algorithm. And the problem that Mixamo is having right now is that the file that we have uploaded apparently already has a skeleton. It's already rigged. And unfortunately, the rig that we already have is not compatible with Mixamo, because for that to happen, it would have to be the exact same skeleton as Mixamo uses. So in a nutshell, we need to get rid of the skeleton that PsyDuck already has. So let's take care of that. Let's have a look at how we do that. And to do that, we are going to use Blender. Now, you can use any 3D modeling software of your choice. I use Blender for this type of stuff. Blender is freely available online. I believe it's at blender.org. And you can just download it here and install it there. And then you can continue with the tutorial. And once you've opened Blender, this is what you should be seeing. So let's clean out the scene a little bit. We can click anywhere and then press the A button, or anywhere in the viewport rather, to select everything that's in there. A camera, a cube, light. It's just some default stuff. We don't need it, so we can press delete to delete all of it, and then it's gone. Another thing that I like to do is to take care of this animation panel down here, because we're not gonna animate anything. So I'm just gonna put my mouse here, turn it into a crosshair, click and drag down, and that will hide it. If you want to make more viewports or views, you can actually do the opposite. Put your mouse there until it turns into a crosshair and move, and you can drag out another view. Anyways, let's do this again to remove it. And that's the way I like it. So then I'm going to go to File, Import FBX, because we can't open an FBX directly. And I'm going to go find my PsyDuck FBX that we've downloaded. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of bones here right now. Now, I hope that you can see on the overlay here how I am moving my mouse around and pressing my middle mouse button to navigate. So it's middle mouse to rotate, shift and middle mouse to pan. And that's most of the controls that we will be using in Blender for this. So as you can see, there are a lot of strange objects here, which are actually the bones, the armature, the skeleton, whatever you want to call it. And if we go from object mode up here to pose mode, we can see that they'll turn blue, and then we can mess with them. So let's say we select this one up here, or rather this one in the middle. If we press the R button, which stands for rotate, and start moving that, you can see that you can move that bone and move the beak of PsyDuck around. So escape to undo that. If we select the bone in the arm, for instance, press rotate. Oh, this is actually the foot that we have control of, I guess. So anyways, that's how you can animate PsyDuck, which is not something we're going to be doing. We actually want to delete all of this. So I'm going to go back to object mode, and I'm going to select armature here, press delete, and that will delete everything. Now, PsyDuck did not like that, and he blew out of proportion. He became quite big, and as you can see, we probably want to rotate him a bit so that he can stand up again. So we're gonna click here on the left arrow, and then we will get all the information that you typically expect from an inspector in 3D software, so transform information. So what we want to do is we want to scale them to their actual size, and PsyDuck is actually, I've looked it up, it should be 80 centimeters tall. So what we can do is we can click and drag down to select all of the scale variables here, and then type 0.008, and that will scale PsyDuck down to an absolute height of about 0.8 meters, which is exactly what we want. Now we can't really see him anymore because he's, he went from 100 meters to 80 centimeters. So to make the view focus back on PsyDuck, we can start moving our mouse around and start zooming in and out, but you can also just make sure he's selected up here and then press the period or dot, whatever you want to call it, or the delete key on your numerical keyboard, which you can't see in the overlay, but it's on your numerical keyboard. Just press the period and it'll make him zoom in and focus on the object again. Now, I don't know if this works without a numerical keyboard, actually. No, if you do it without a numerical keyboard, it will look like this. So that's a little bit annoying. However, I looked it up online, and apparently the way to get that numpad period is actually done by selecting frame selected. Now, I have no idea how frame selected would translate to view on object or focus on object, what it's typically called in other software. But if you use it, it'll do the same thing without a numerical keyboard. Anyways, we can see our little PsyDuck buddy here again, and PsyDuck has the right height. So the final thing we want to do is rotate PsyDuck around. So it's the red axis that we want rotation on. So 90 degrees on the x-axis. We'll put PsyDuck where PsyDuck is supposed to be. And now we have a mesh for PsyDuck that should work when we import it, and that should do everything else fine. Now, before we move on, I want to show a final quick thing here in Blender. So if you click on PsyDuck in the mesh, you'll see the materials here. So if there's anything wrong with a 3D model, you can look at the materials, what's going on. And if you click on the material button here in the properties, you can actually see what the settings for these different ones are. And you can, let me see here. Sorry, I'm actually selecting the wrong, because these symbols are, these icons are so similar. It's actually the one down here for the material. You can see all of them, and you can hook up the textures and see how everything will look like in Blender. But if they're in the right folder, usually just clicking on this will show you everything textured. So you can also kind of tell, because the icons are showing you here, that they are not just grayed out. Now we do see an issue with our PsyDuck character here. It's kind of semi-transparent. What's going on there? Well, that's actually because it looks like the material for this mesh is set up to show the back face. So that's a quick fix. It's somewhere in here. Here we go. So under settings, it says show back face. So I don't know if you can do that for all of them at once. So let's try. I'm just going to select all of them, click on show back face. And that looks like, no, it only did it for the first one, but the first one just has a lot of impact. So if I'm yeah, we can still see the issue there. Now I don't know if Unity is gonna render it like that as well, but I'm just gonna make sure the back faces aren't shown. And now our model looks pretty good, pretty good. One more thing that I wanted to point out, because since it's a model from the internet, you see strange things that you don't always expect. So I'm gonna go back to just the shaded version. As you can see, PsyDuck is kind of wearing this visor almost as you're moving him around. Like it looks like some sort of sunglasses. So what's going on there? Well, I'll add a video in the further reading on why this is, but this is actually to animate 2D cartoony eyes on a character. They added an additional mesh, and what you can do is you can go to edit mode by pressing tap on your keyboard, or you can go to edit mode up here. And then if you hover over the secondary mesh the way 3D Modeler has made and press the L button, it will select that secondary mesh. So you can see that there is two meshes. There is the big PsyDuck one. Well, if I don't select anything, you'll see there's that one. And then there's this one. And if I press G, which is move, and Y on my keyboard, I can actually move it and you'll see what's going on there. So that's good to know that that exists as well. It's kind of a weird mesh. If we look at what it actually looks like, you'll see that the body does seem to contain some information for the eyes, but that's what's going on. So just a quick thing to point that out in case we run into any issues with them. But I'm gonna press Ctrl Z to make sure that everything is the way it was supposed to be. I'm gonna press tab again, so we're out of edit mode, inspect my model one final time. But overall, this looks like a fine model. So we are ready to go animate a Mixamo now. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on Export FBX. Okay, I'm just going to save on my desktop, and we're going to call this PsyDuck Unrigged. So with rigging, that means there's no skeleton in there anymore. Now, before we press any button, we have to make sure that everything is matching with Unity. And actually, I got a little too fast there. I'm going to cancel this for 1 second. The first thing I want to do, as you can see, it still says the scale up here, 0.008. I want to make sure that this is the default scale so that we're not sending a scaled object that's still 100 meters tall to Unity. So the way to do that is just select PsyDuck, do Object, Apply, All Transforms. And as you can see now, the rotation is at 0, the scale's at 0. So that's one thing that's great. The other thing before I export is, so I go to Export FBX. Here we go. So you want to make sure that the forward and up are matching Unity. So in Unity, Y will be up, not Z, and forward on Z is -C forward. So this is my default setting and it's already there. So you want -C forward and Y up because we have a left-hand coordinate system, which I explain in another video. And I also click on Apply Transform because I don't know. I don't know why, but I know it usually works for me that way. It's an experimental function, I think. That's why it still has this thing on there. But I already applied the transform in Unity, so it should be redundant, but I have sometimes run into issues doing this in the past. So yeah, that's what I do. So PsyDuck Unrigged, export FBX, and then we can take this model into Mixamo and put some animations on it. So in Mixamo, let's see if it works now. We're going to upload our character. So here we go. By the way, if you don't know how to do that thing I just did, it's pressing the Windows button and then the arrow keys. If you do that, you can, because we'll probably end up using that a lot on the same monitor. You can move stuff around like that. It's super cool. Anyway, so we get PsyDuck E, or PsyDuck E, uploaded, and we're going to have to wait for a second again. Oh, actually that went so fast that I didn't even have to pause. So then we got PsyDuck in there. So this is working for me. Hope it works for you as well. You can pan, you can rotate, but we don't want any of that. We're gonna go straight to next. You can read the text though, obviously. And we're gonna put some markers for the auto rig. So the Mixamo algorithm is gonna use these to put their skeleton in PsyDuck, and you have to put them at the wrists. I mean, there's a reference here in case you wanna have a closer look. At the elbows, at the knees. Now, that's why I'm using PsyDuck actually, because ideally, you want to have a character in the T-pose. This is what's the T-pose, like when the character has the arms stretched out like that's called a T-pose. And you kind of want them to have the same features as a human if you're using Mixamo. So like 2 legs and 2 arms sticking out. That's the easiest way of doing it. And then, you need to put the groin somewhere as well. And I'm going to put the groin kind of here now. You'll see that we're gonna get some strange animations because PsyDuck doesn't really have knees, he doesn't really have legs. So, but I think that's fine. For the sake of learning and for the sake of this tutorial series, I think that's absolutely fine. It'll still look reasonably okay. I'm gonna put the chin slightly higher. Now you can mess with it as much as you like. The only thing that you wanna do here is you wanna go with no fingers, and then you can press next, yeah. So then he's gonna auto rig, and that can take up to 2 minutes. So it'll probably take a couple of seconds, so I'm just gonna pause and unpause here, and then we get ourselves an animated PsyDuck. And as I was promising, he's looking a little weird, but we like him that way. So yeah, let's just go with him. So I'm gonna press next here, and I'm gonna scale this up or maximize my view. Click on animations in case you're not there, and as you can see, PsyDuck is back in the T-pose, and you can also see that little visor. It's not gonna affect anything. We're not gonna animate the eyes for any of my tutorial series on this, but you can see that it's kind of still there. And now we want some animations. So for the sake of this, I would like to have an idle animation. So I'm gonna look for an idle, and not just any idle, because I've used Mixamo before, and I know that they have some dwarf models, which I think are going to look better on PsyDuck than a non-dwarf character. So let's go, yeah, we want something where the arms are kind of sticking out. Well, this one seems to have some additional animation, which looks fun, but I think this one's probably a good one. So yeah, that's an idle animation, and we can mess around with the values here a little bit, like make the arms a little bit wider, a little bit more PsyDuck-y. You can overdrive it if you like, then it'll just go faster or not. I think this is fine. And then we can download this animation. And the first one, the idle one, I always download with the skin, because if you download with skin, it will bring the skeleton and the model with the download. If you don't bring the skin with you, you will just have the animation, and you need to already have downloaded the skin somewhere else. So we're gonna do that. Keyframe reduction, that's something for, keyframe reduction, if you're unfamiliar with what a keyframe is, it's a bit of an animation thing. So let's say I have my hand here, right? And I would like to animate it from this position to that position. We could have one keyframe here, and then a second keyframe down here. And everything in between, if it's just this one motion over the whatever axis, it's just a matter of linear interpolation, right? We can easily calculate everything in between there, unless I'm moving my fingers or something. But in general, if that's all there is to it, if it's just this one rotation around the wrist, all we have to know is this thing and that thing, and then kind of how fast do we want to get there? Do we want to ease in and do we want to ease out? But whatever. So what it comes down to is like, these are the keyframes. And what you can do in Mixamo is run an algorithm where it's going to look for keyframes that are kind of redundant to reduce the file size. So that's what keyframe reduction is. I don't ever use it. I don't think it's worth it. So I would just leave it as is. So the frames per second then, so that's the amount of frames of animation that you're going to have per second to complete the animation that we are downloading. Now, you might think like, oh, if you play a lot of games, like, oh, 60 FPS is so much better than 30 FPS. Yes, it's smoother, a lot smoother. But unless you're making a really nice AAA style game, it doesn't matter. I would very much leave this at 30 frames per second as well, because you are saving a heck of a lot more. Like, your file size will go up tremendously if you increase the frames per second. So my recommendation would be leave it at 30 as well. And for the first file, like I said, use with skin. And oh, almost forgot, FBX for Unity. Doesn't make a big difference. It's just a couple of optimizations. You can look on the Unity side or the Mixamo side what they're optimizing exactly. It's not that relevant. I just use it and it's better apparently. So we can just go with that. And then we click on download. And we will be downloading our first FBX that will contain both the skeleton and the animation that we want. So we can just save it on the desktop. And then just, I'm just gonna grab a couple more. Like I would like PsyDuck to be able to walk. So, oh yeah, let's see if we, that looks a little bit too weird because he didn't have the knees and it's kind of using the mesh for that. So like, is this, I don't know. Like, I think maybe this one. Nah, like, I think I like this. I mean, I love the strut that he's got. Like, yeah, let's just do that. Maybe make it a little less overdriven. Nah, well, I mean, you can mess with it as you like. Give him a little bit more arm space. You can also trim the animation if you feel it's, but you know, if you trim it, the loop's not going to be perfect anymore. Now, the important part though is if you look at this, you'll see that our friend here is going from about here to about there. So this animation contains information about location, and we don't want that when we're making video games. We want to be able to move him around using our code rather than having a canned animation, right? So you can click on in place, and now we will just walk in place and we can animate him. The only thing you want to be aware of is like if you want him to walk faster, you want to overdrive it a bit so that, you know, the animation, like if you put the animation like so, he'll be speed walking and, you know, it'll look a lot more natural that way if you want him to move fast. I want him to really go slow, so that's what I'm gonna do. So let's download this one, and this time around we don't need the skin and everything else can stay the same because Mixamo is so wonderful to remember all of this. And then, let's save this. Last one that I want is for PsyDuck to run so that when we get close, we can really make him go fast. So, oh, that's perfect. Yeah, I mean, you know, again, the animation isn't, but if we set this to in place, like this is gonna look fun enough for the game that we're making. So let's download this guy here. So without skin, 30 frames per second, done. Done. All right, now if you're working on the assignment for my class, I'll put another, you know, you have the trainer that you want to animate as well. So for the trainer, get similar animations, an idle, a walk, a run, and also get a throw one. Now, if you want to get a throw animation though, please pick one that's not too long. Like, let's see, what does this look like? Yeah, I mean, you can overdrive it a little bit as well. Like, I feel, you know, don't get like an animation like this thing here, like where they're stepping forward and everything. Try to keep it as simple as possible. Anyways, just a quick side note. So yeah, let's go to Unity and let's do some importing. So I'm in Unity now, and I've opened up a URP project, which you can tell from looking at the universal render pipeline settings right here, or the settings folder you have up there, or if you click on README, it'll tell you that it's a URP empty template. So this is important because this is the rendering pipeline that we are going to be using. Anyhow, let's bring in PsyDuck. So what we're going to do is we're just going to drag PsyDuck in from the desktop where I have him, but if you put PsyDuck somewhere else, you can export PsyDuck from down there. And there's the unrigged version that we use for Mixamo, which we're not going to need anymore because we saved one file with the skin, which is the dwarf idle in my case. And I'm going to just drag that in. There you go. And that will put PsyDuck into our assets of the project. Now, the first thing that we want to do is make sure that everything looks okay. So we're going to drag PsyDuck in. I'm going to put him to 0, 0, 0. And as you can see, the reference point for PsyDuck is on his feet, so that's great. And this is the middle point of the map, and everything looks okay. Now, what I'm looking for to say that it's okay is the green arrow, the green axis, the Y, is pointing upwards in relation to the PsyDuck model. The blue one is pointing forward, and the red one is pointing to the right of the character if you're looking from his back, or the front, the left of the character if you're looking to the front, because it's a left-handed coordinate system. So if we have that, that means that our mesh is properly oriented and scaled. Scaling, however, to know that, you can do another quick test, because there's nothing here that will tell you how big the mesh really is at first sight. So an easy way to do it is just put a cube in there. And the Unity standard cube is 1 by 1. So as you can see here, PsyDuck is about 0.8 So that's literally what we wanted. So this is a properly scaled, properly oriented mesh. And if we open them up here, because this is actually the prefab, so Unity will grab all the information that we got from Blender, and Unity has different elements for parts of a 3D model, or rather of an FBX file. So all those elements have their own assets. So there is the Mixamo rig, which is referred to as hips as well, because it starts with the hips of the character. That's typically where a rig starts. But this is your skeleton, this is your armature, this is your rig. Then you have this is where the materials are applied, I believe. Then you have the 4 materials for PsyDuck. Then we have the actual mesh, which again is oriented correctly. And again, you can see here how some of the UV maps of the textures are going to be on top of the eyes to animate. We're not actually going to do animation. I'll provide an additional video in the further reading, but you can see that the mesh, that there's some fun stuff going on down there. And then we have the actual idle animation. And as you can tell by, sorry, let's select them again. And then, oh, now I broke it. How do I get this? Oh yeah, I just dragged it. Yeah, here it is. So I just minimized it by clicking on it. Yep, there we go. Yeah, so anyways, if I click on the play button, you'll see it moves slightly because it's an idle animation. And you can see how many frames it is and so forth. So all these elements together are in a prefab. And Unity, a prefab is a collection of different assets. And the prefab itself is the parent asset, and then the other ones are called children. But anyways, so the first thing that I want to do here is I want to move this somewhere else. So let's set up a nice clean folder structure. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make our prefabs. But I'm not going to drop this prefab in there right now. I'm going to use those prefabs later on in the project because you can add more to them. And I want to add a whole bunch of other stuff to them. So we're just going to have a prefab with a child prefab in it because this is already a lot of information. And I'm going to create another folder, which I'm going to call models. So for all the 3D art and models are going to go in here. So I'm going to drag this model over, open this up. And okay, this is nice. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to go call this, well, it's not actually a static mesh, but the parts that I'm going to leave in there are basically going to be the rig and the static mesh. So I'm just going to call it SM_PsyDuck. So this is not something that's super important that you do, but these letters, these prefixes in front of the actual title, I like to do it though because it keeps my structure slightly cleaner. Unity has lots of tools for searching, and you can easily just filter by type and like, okay, I want to see all the materials, all the meshes. So it's not super relevant that you do that, but I like working with naming conventions like that. So that's why I do it. It's just a habit that I have, and I recommend that you use it as well because it has perks. So then I want to get this animation out of here, but I can't drag it out. So the way to do that is to actually duplicate. So I'm going to select this animation, this idle, press Ctrl and D. So I'll just put the keyboard on so you can see it. Ctrl D, and that will bring out the animation. And then I'm going to call the animation AN PsyDuck idle. Now, any Mixamo rig will probably be able to use this to some extent, but since PsyDuck is so much different in proportion to the trainer character that we're likely going to bring in, it's good to name them for what they come from. And then you can go in here and pressing delete doesn't really do it right away. Yeah, you can't delete them straight up because Unity doesn't allow you, but you can go to your prefab basically. I mean, it's actually an import settings, and click on animation and then import animation, apply. So just uncheck that box and that will remove the animation. So it's no longer imported from the FBX. I'm just going to clear out my console from that error message. So then this actually the static mesh I'm going to leave in there. This is like a connection between the static mesh and the materials. I'm just going to leave that in there as well. Don't really need it right now. And then I'm going to click here again. I'm going to go to materials and I'm going to export all my materials. So extract them. And I can do that in this folder for now. And that'll bring out all my materials, and I'm going to start naming those as well. So this is going to be MA for material, PsyDuck _, just select all of that. And this was the body. Try not to make too many typos. This one is the eye. That one's the left iris, just gonna keep it that way. There you go. So now that's named as well. So what I would like to do now, because I'm not gonna extract any of the other things, they can just stay with my so-called static mesh here. Now I wanna bring in those materials. Now I'm gonna show you how you can import in another way as well. Whoops, I didn't mean to, oh gosh, I pressed Ctrl-C and everything went wrong. But yeah, I'm just gonna delete this and I'm just gonna do that again. And now I'm gonna import, but keep the mouse pressed down. And I am going to import my, okay, this is too much searching. So I guess I'm going back here, go to my PsyDuck folder, look for PsyDuck, look for images, and here are all the images. And you want to select all the images and just drop them in there. You don't know how things are hooked up on the materials always. It's better to just import everything. So with that in mind, then we can see what we have here. Now, usually that's kind of interesting because usually it will hook them up automatically. I'm going to press Ctrl-S, but it's not hooking them up. Now, if we want to hook these up ourselves, we can absolutely do that. We can go in here and we can start hooking everything up. However, I do believe that if you have the materials already in there, if you have the textures already in there rather, that Unity can do that for you. So what I'm going to do is just to test that and try that out is select it again, my idle, drop it in there. And see, now the idle actually already has the textures applied because once you import, Unity will look for are these textures here. So that's fine. What we can do is delete the one that we had, open this one up again. And let's see, we don't need the animation. So we will once again disable the animation, apply. And the materials are already exported. So I'm just going to delete the materials here. There you go. And now I'm going to extract these materials because they're going to be connected to the textures already. And once again, I'm going to go through them real quick. And rename, oh shoot, that's not it. So as you can see why I did a naming convention, or actually you can really see why I do that, because everything stays in one place now. Because before the naming convention, this iris was behind it, and it's just hard to find stuff when you have a big folder. I'm going to do the same thing for the textures here. They have kind of strange names, so I mean, there's a normal map in here, there's an eye mask, I think, then there's these files. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to call them TX, PsyDuck, so TX standing for texture. There you go. And I'm just going to edit them all like that real quick. I really hope that Unity doesn't have like a better process to renaming files in bulk, because I would look really silly if I would do that right now. Spend all this time renaming them while I would just be a simple feature. And this guy can be PsyDuck. Now, you might notice that not everything is looking great just yet, because PsyDuck has the visor on. There seems to be a rendering issue. So usually when you have rendering issues in your project, when you import models from the internet, it's going to be because you didn't set up your materials properly and it just didn't get stored the correct way. So what we can do is we can fix that. And I think what's probably happening is that the irises that are drawn on here so that the eyes can actually, because if you look at this texture, whoops, if you look at this texture, the iris is drawn separately. So the model is set up to be able to do that. So they're probably, since it's all black, it's probably supposed to be a non-opaque surface type. So let's put that on transparent. And let's put this one on transparent as well for both of these materials. And yeah, see, that fixes everything. And when I press Ctrl-S to save, it looks like it updated PsyDuck. And PsyDuck looks great now. Final thing, this looks like a normal. So I just noticed that there is no normal map on here on the body material. So I am just going to grab that body normal. I think it's this one. And so select this. This is a strange looking normal though. So maybe this doesn't work at all, but I'm just going to try this. See what happens when I drag it in there. Okay. Yeah, okay. That's not what that's supposed to do. Clearly. Well, I don't think we're going to worry too much about it. Just delete it again. Yeah, it says body nor, but like the colors here are not looking like a normal at all. I have no idea what kind of texture this could possibly be right now. But, you know, I think PsyDuck looks fine for our purposes. This is a very nice looking duck. Let's pull him out in the viewport, and PsyDuck's looking pretty good there as well. Oh, the PsyDuck that I deleted, we can delete here as well. And now we have our PsyDuck nicely imported into Unity. There's one more thing that I would like to do, and that is to clean everything up and maybe import the other animations as well. So that can be pretty quickly. We're just going to select all the other animations, drag and drop them in there. And then we get, again, a parent asset and then the actual animation. So the same principle applies here. We can just select all of these and then go Control D, and that will duplicate them. Then we can select, and I'm holding Control down for selecting multiples. We can select all the objects, and then we can call them AN PsyDuck. So the animations that I got, because I didn't put all of them in the video, I think, because I recorded the video in 2 parts. So the animations that I got is one for PsyDuck falling flat, one for PsyDuck running fast, one for PsyDuck being surprised, one for PsyDuck just walking, just going on a little stroll. And when it says there's no model available for preview now, that's easy to fix. All you have to do is drag PsyDuck in there, press play, and yeah, look at them go. PsyDuck. The other one, and it'll do it for all of them. So this is my surprise, like, oh no. This is my idle one. Breathing. This is my falling flat. Oh, this is my fast run. Because what we are going to do is make a game where PsyDuck will try to run away from us. And this is his falling flat, which I think is great because he just blows up like a balloon. All right, so almost done here. So let's make sure that we get a nice file structure. So typically what I like to do is just make a folder called animations. And what do you think I'm going to do with that? If you were thinking drop all the animations in there, you would be correct. One for the materials, and one for my textures, and one for my meshes. And I mean, this is a folder structure that fits Unreal more, because I usually develop in Unreal Engine rather than Unity. But yeah, I think this works for Unity just fine. I mean, this would work for any 3D modeling software. Oh gosh, did I accidentally duplicate stuff? Yeah, that was not intended. Can I Control Z this? Okay. All right, well, I'll deal with that later. So put my textures in here, and then let's look at every folder. So in the animations, I inadvertently copied everything. So we don't need this folder, and we don't need any of these things. I mean, you should not have that problem if you've been following along. But we have materials here, the mesh here, and textures there. And those are the models. So yeah, and in my prefab, what will happen is we will drag, you don't have to do this right now, but we will drag PsyDuck from up here in the hierarchy in there. And then it'll ask us, do you want to create a variant? So do you want to take a copy of the prefab, or do you want to make an original prefab? And we can then make an original prefab, and everything that happens here to PsyDuck we can store in a prefab there. But for now I'm going to delete that because we don't need that. And I'm going to delete, I'll leave PsyDuck out here for now. And that's going to be it for this video. I hope this was a fun video to watch, and I hope that you learned something. And yeah, we'll get PsyDuck moving and play a game with them as soon as we can. Bye bye. See you in the next video.